So today I'll be presenting my third paper, my third doctoral paper, which talks about the impact of internet technology on the labor market. And in this case, we are talking about Canada. Now, you might think that this topic is only relevant for least developed countries, developing countries, but as I'm hoping to show you this morning, this is relevant even for Canada, the creation of the potential gender imbalances and minority imbalances that we may find even for Canada. And this research is being supported by the Canadian Research Data Center Network from Statistics Canada, which means that I'm having access to some really cool data, micro data level, secret top data. You cannot have access to internet and everything, but it's really cool to have that kind of data there. Okay, so this is a quick map to show you that, in fact, the internet is not uniformly distributed across Canada. Here we are talking about the official definition of high-speed internet, which is a minimum of 50 megabits per second for download, 10 megabits per second for upload, and unlimited access to data. So you see here that there is an irregular distribution of that type of technology. This definition is provided by the telecom regulator, okay, the CRTC. Now, I'm sure you will guess where the problem is. It is, in fact, in the First Nations territories, in the remote areas, in the small municipalities. That's where the problem lies. So we have had a regulation in 2016, which has released $6 billion just to solve this problem. The idea here is that by 2021, we would have 90% of all households covered with high-speed internet. You will see here that this clearly did not happen. This is population covered in percentage. So, of course, wonderful progress. We cannot deny it, but the problem is not yet solved as of the date of 2022. Now, you have certainly heard on the news that women have worked from home more than men, right? That's what you heard. Oh, that's great. Women work more from it. That's autonomy for women. That's the type of work they do. However, when you look as you go inland in Canada, from large cities to rural and remote areas, you're going to see that women have been losing advantage. So that's the problem here. In large cities, women work from home much more than men, but as we move inland, this story is quite different, okay? Now, you might think, well, but you need to control for education, you need to control for occupations, industry. Here I'm showing you, at least for education is not the problem. It is the opposite. As we move inland, women tend to get even stronger in terms of skilled labor force, okay? And so our questions, I'm sure you might have guessed, they are three. First, we are interested in knowing whether the individuals living in these less connected municipalities were harmed in their ability to adopt working from home practices. Second, we are interested in learning about gender, minority gaps, and of course, we are also interested in knowing about gender and educational levels, if there is variation there. And we are interested in knowing whether these differences persist over time. So we are very lucky that Statistics Canada have collected since April of 2020, right after the pandemic, they have been asking a simple question. What's your workplace status? From 2022 onwards, they have been asking, have you been working also hybrid? So we have this beautiful, wonderful panel data set with this question, and we can follow individuals over time. Okay, and we have the data for internet connection over time as well. So in terms of research design, first, for the census, we have 9 million observations that we are controlling for all kinds of variables that we think are relevant, including for COVID-19 related variables. For the panel data set, we are controlling, we'll have the opportunity to do fixed effects. This is econometrics language. Fixed effects in which we are controlling for the characteristics that do not change municipality over municipality. And that's it, okay? So that's the most basic research design. Now, we know that this relationship is extremely endogenous. Internet connection and labor outcomes, we don't know which comes first, right? So the idea here is that we are using an instrumental variables approach. in which an exogenous instrument will help to explain the internet on the first stage, and then we are using the result of this first regression to estimate our labor outcomes. So now what variables can we use? The first, we have two bets. We have actually 4 bets from the literature, but we are betting especially on 2 of them. The first one is weather. And by weather, I am betting especially on the amount of rain and amount of snow. Okay, a recent report from 2023 by the CRTC showed that, in fact, rain and snow are disturbance to high-speed internet. So we are betting on that. And also topographical features. For example, if you have a region of high mountains, so it's hard to arrive the infrastructure there. So we are also trying to implement that. And this is just very, very quickly something very cool that I would like to show you. So the idea here is that if you are curious about the weather station that predicts the weather, let's say in Montreal, how do we know which weather station predicts the weather of Montreal? I don't know if you have had that kind of question before. So the idea is this. We have about 1,400 weather stations. And to estimate the weather in each municipality, what we need to do is to find, this is with the support of geographical software. We find the centroid of the municipality, and then we look for the closest N weather stations. And we use a process called inverted distance measuring, inverted distance weighting, in which the closest the weather station to the center of the polygon, the most likely this is the weather station that is predicting the weather in that station. So we have run a first preliminary result with historical data, and in fact we have found that a 1% increase in the snow on the ground will impact negatively the coverage of internet by 5%. Okay, in terms of the data, I have told you very cool data sets with the census and the labor force studies, labor force service and labor market indicators over time, all of them asking the same question about workplace status. For the internet, we have some really cool data by municipality, which is about a little bit more than 5,000 municipalities in Canada. But we also have a much more granulated data, which is called at the level of dissemination area. So to give you some perspective, there is about 57,000 dissemination areas in Canada. And we have the data for each one of these super small data sets. So we'll be able to have a really cool estimate there. And the census is at the same level as well. So for the controls and the instruments, I think I have talked to you about. Now, let's change gears a little bit, because this is the thing, guys. It's one thing to work from home. The other thing is, who are these people that are working from home? What they're doing? So the International Labour Organization, to avoid that kind of conflict right after the pandemic hit, they defined the following. No, let's work with 2 definitions here. And this is what is important for you. Telework. Telework is the work that was done from home, but with the support of ICT resources. In other words, if you have a computer in front of you, you're most likely to be skilled, and that's what we are talking about here. Now, the census and the labor force service, they don't ask that question. They will ask you whether you work from home or not. So the data that I showed you before, that's great, but it tells us an imperfect story. What about the guys that really do telework? From ICT resources. So this is the story that I want to tell you from the descriptive data. When we classify, there is a paper, 2020, that classified by all the positions, both for the United States and Canada, what is teleworkable, what is not. So I used that classification already in the literature, and I brought that to the census and the labor force service. Okay, let's see here from these guys who work from home, who is teleworkable and not. So we have a very interesting and different picture. Take a look at this. For the teleworkable guys, you have very, very strong women, regardless of whether they are from large or smaller municipalities. For men, the things is very different. You see, it falls a lot, right? So there is a positive difference for women. They are much more teleworkable than men. If we look at the intersection of those that both answered working from home and teleworkable, we're not seeing differences. Basically don't have differences in the second line. Now, if we do, now let's think the opposite. Who among those that are teleworkable and did not work from home? In other words, they have the potential, but they did not work from home. So that's what I'm capturing here. And this is the difference between women and men. Take a look at this. As we move inland, the potential for women is even bigger. That's the opposite. Women are even stronger, those that could have been working from home and did not. Okay, so the idea of our paper here is to defend that, well, this is a public policy issue, and this most likely has to do with internet connection, because that's the problem that I showed you in the second slide. Okay. This is just some preliminary results from a simple regression using the open data that we have on the internet for the census. So not much control was done there. I'm still running the regressions at the micro level data, but still using the data that is already available to any one of you that wants to replicate these results, we are going to see this. For fast speed internet, if a 1% increase in high speed internet will make women work from home 4.4% more. Okay, slow internet doesn't make much a difference. It does make a positive difference, but not much. And for men, it does make a difference as well, but this is half of what the impact would be for women. If we talk about rural Canada, I also did a test on that. Rural Canada, you see here that the impact is only positive for fast internet and high-skilled women. All others are irrelevant. Okay, so this is already something interesting to show you. Okay, so in terms of policy implications of our work, let's not be fooled. It's not because the federal workers are now returning to their workplaces 3 times a week that working from home is over. It is not. We have still many people that are working at least in a hybrid model. So this is relevant. For several reasons. We have had, since the pandemic, reduced stigma associated with working from home, a change in the psychological contract of employees from privilege to a right. We have reduced costs for both employees and employers, efficiency gain. And more recently, we have had papers talking about the potential to reduce carbon footprint when we work from home, which is obvious. And the other one is even, hey guys, let's work from home when the weather is too extreme. There was an interesting article at Harvard Business Review that talked about that. In fact, in my own country, we have seen this year. In São Paulo, we have had a terrible weather in which employers said, you know what, stay home and work from there. You know, so let's not think that this is something that is for the long future. It is already happening. However, to guarantee this future that is, most likely to happen, we need to have policymakers on board with us, providing, the real infrastructure for everyone. This is also true for Canada, as I hope to have showed you a little bit here. I hope to have convinced you of this. Part of the story is about letting infrastructure come, for example, through satellites that can arrive at the more remote regions. Part of the reason also is to foster competition. We have only 3 providers of internet connection today in Canada, so the big monopoly that could be reviewed. Cost of broadband is related to that. One of the highest costs of broadband among OECD members is in Canada. We do have a national broadband policy in place, at least for 10 years now, which is great. But as I hope to have showed you in the first, at least in the first slides, still not enough. And what we are trying to convey here is that idea that let's be positive, let's not be negative. If we make technology arrive at these smaller places, we might have an even more equal society with even smaller gender gaps and having all of those statistics beautifully from left side and right side, no differences between women and men, but a more equal society. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to your questions.